Welcome, curious minds, to the Deep Dive. Coming to you today from RWG Publishing. I'm really glad you've decided to join us because today we're plunging into a topic that, well, it really gets to the heart of our democracy and our personal freedoms. Okay, picture this. You're just walking down a public street, maybe heading to the store, and you see a public official, maybe a police officer, maybe someone else, doing something. Well, questionable. So you pull out your phone to record, and bam, suddenly you're being confronted. Do you actually have the right to film that? What happens next? This isn't just some thought experiment. It's actually the daily reality for people called First Amendment auditors. And it's the really gripping subject of Bill Vincent's book, Protecting Our Rights, the Role of First Amendment Auditors.
Exactly. And our mission here today in this deep dive is to pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge, the key insights from Vincent's work. We want to give you a clear, kind of actionable understanding of what these First Amendment audits are. What's the legal basis? How do they work in practice? And what's their real impact on creating a more transparent, more accountable society? Vincent's core insight, I think, is that these audits aren't just about recording things. He sees them more as a form of, constitutional stress testing. It's about people deliberately pushing the boundaries of their rights in real time, basically forcing public institutions to either, uphold the law or show that they're failing to.
Yeah.
This book, it really is a guide for understanding how our constitutional rights aren't just words on paper. They're living, breathing tools we can all actually use.
Okay. Constitutional stress testing. I like that. So let's unpack that a bit. What exactly are First Amendment audits, like at their very core? What's the main goal?
Well, what's fascinating here is how simple yet powerful the basic idea is. First Amendment audits are basically activities carried out by individuals, the auditors, who are simply exercising their right to record video in public spaces. That's it. The primary goal is to make sure that public officials and public institutions, could be a post office, a library, maybe a courthouse, even a police station, are respecting and upholding constitutional rights. We're talking about rights related to religion, expression, assembly, and importantly, the right to petition the government. And these recordings, they often get shared pretty widely on social media, places like YouTube, Facebook. And that sparks these really vital discussions about civil liberties and governmental accountability. That sharing aspect is a key part of their power,
It sounds like a very modern thing with the phones and social media. But does Vincent see this as something totally new? Or does he connect it back to earlier movements?
Oh, he definitely connects them back. He sees a clear lineage, actually. The roots, you could argue, trace back to the broader civil rights movements, say the 1960s and 70s. Back then, documentation, think about photos, cameras capturing injustice. That was a absolutely key tool for bringing issues to light, for forcing change. But this specific practice, recording public officials specifically to test if they know and respect constitutional rights, that really started picking up steam in the early 2000s. And that was largely driven by, digital recording technology becoming cheap and easy, and the rise of social media for getting the word out instantly. Vincent's book specifically mentions Philip Turner, who goes by the Batusai online. He's seen as an early, very influential figure. Turner started doing audits around the mid-2000s, documenting his interactions, especially with law enforcement, and his videos, which often highlighted misconduct or just plain ignorance of the law, they quickly inspired a whole lot of other people to start doing the same thing.
Okay, so technology definitely gave it a boost. But what's the fundamental reason Vincent says these audits matter so much? It sounds like it comes down to those big democratic principles, transparency and accountability. Is that right?
Absolutely spot on. Vincent makes a really strong case that transparency and accountability aren't just nice ideas. They're tangible results that auditors actively force into existence. He argues that just knowing your rights exist isn't enough. They have to be actively exercised to build that public trust that's so essential for a healthy democracy. Think about it. When public institutions operate transparently, we, the citizens, can see how decisions are made, how our money's being spent, how officials are behaving. These audits, then, they act as this crucial check on government power. They help ensure officials are acting legal, respecting rights. The recordings themselves can become evidence if there's misconduct. But maybe just as importantly, they act as a deterrent. Knowing you might be recorded can foster a culture of accountability, encourage better behavior.
And this isn't just theory for Bill Vincent, the author, right?
Yep.
The book makes it clear he has a personal stake in this.
Oh, absolutely. He comes at this from a deeply personal angle. It really started from a genuine concern for civil liberties. His whole journey began, interestingly enough, with just curiosity. He stumbled upon an auditor's video online. I think there's an interaction at a post office. And that video was apparently quite eye-opening for him. It showed the auditor calmly explaining his rights while officials had, let's say, varied reactions. So, inspired, Vincent decided to try it himself. His first audit was actually at his local library, a place he knew well. He described it as both, exhilarating and pretty nerve-wracking. Staff reactions were mixed, some curious, some suspicious. But he found that by calmly explaining his purpose, he could complete the audit without major problems. He then went on to do more, including one at a police station where he did face a confrontation. An officer demanded he stop recording. These experiences, especially the tough ones, really shaped his perspective. They drove home how fundamental the right to record is in a democracy, and also how important things like patience, persistence, and, crucially, respectful communication are when doing this work. It's not just legal theory for him, it's definitely lived experience.
Yeah. Right, so all this action, these audits, they stand on a pretty clear legal foundation. Vincent's book must really dig into the First Amendment as the bedrock here.
Yeah.
Can you kind of break down those core freedoms from his perspective? How do they apply?
Yeah, absolutely. For Vincent, the First Amendment isn't just some historical document. It's basically the auditor's operational manual. It's the toolkit. He highlights how each specific freedom becomes a direct tool in their work. So you've got freedom of speech that allows people to express themselves, including through recording, without the government interfering. Then there's freedom of the press. And Vincent argues, quite compellingly, I think, that this extends directly to the citizen journalist holding a smartphone. That really changes who gets to report on public officials, doesn't it? You also have freedom of assembly, which protects the right to gather peacefully. This could be for demonstrations or even group audits. And finally, the freedom to petition the government the right to seek remedies for injustices. This is critical for auditors who often use their findings to push for policy changes. So yeah, these freedoms aren't just abstract concepts. They are the active legal shield, and sometimes the sword, for First Amendment auditors.
That's undeniably powerful when you lay it out like that. But I wonder, does Vincent talk about situations where these rights are still being, maybe, challenged, or where the interpretation isn't always clear-cut, leading to conflicts even with these precedents in place?
That's a really important point, and yes, he definitely addresses that. While the legal foundation is strong, how it plays out on the ground in real interactions, that can be messy, which is precisely why these audits are so necessary, in his view. Thankfully, the courts have given us some pretty strong guidance over the years. You've got New York Times Company v. United States from '71, the famous Pentagon Papers case. That really reinforced a free press and the public's right to information, setting a super high bar for government censorship or prior restraint. Then there's Brandenburg v. Ohio from 1969. That established the imminent lawless action test, protecting even really controversial speech unless it's directly inciting immediate illegal acts. But even more specific to recording, you have Glick v. Cuniff in 2011. That was a First Circuit Court of Appeals. And they explicitly ruled that the First Amendment protects the right to record public officials in public spaces. Very clear. And then in 2017, Turner v. Driver from the Fifth Circuit reinforced the right to record police officers, specifically from a public sidewalk. So Vincent really underscores how these precedents clarify things powerfully. Documenting interactions with public officials in public areas is a protected form of speech. It empowers all of us as citizens to monitor our government and make sure they're sticking to the Constitution, even when, those principles get challenged in the moment.
Okay, so who are these individuals actually doing this work? You said they come from all walks of life, but they seem united by a pretty clear mission.
That's exactly right. They are everyday people, diverse backgrounds, different jobs, different perspectives, but they are united by that common goal: promoting transparency and holding officials accountable. Vincent's book breaks down their goals pretty clearly. They aim to, 1, ensure public institutions operate transparently. 2, hold officials accountable for their actions. 3, educate the public, both officials and citizens, about constitutional rights. And 4, advocate for broader systemic changes. Things like addressing patterns of police misconduct or exposing potential government corruption. They really see themselves as active participants in keeping our civic environment healthy.
The book also profiles some specific auditors who've become quite well known, right? Showing there isn't just one way to do this.
Yes, it does. Beyond Philip Turner, the Batusai, who we mentioned as that influential pioneer, Vincent highlights others too, like Jeff Gray, who goes by Honor Your Oath. Gray is known for his really calm demeanor and his deep knowledge of the law. He often focuses on interactions with law enforcement, but with a very educational approach, explaining things as he goes. Then you have someone like James Freeman, who takes maybe a more assertive, direct stance. He's known for really challenging authority directly when he believes rights are clearly being violated. These different figures show the variety of strategies within the movement, different styles, but all ultimately pushing towards those same core goals of transparency and accountability.
And where are these audits typically happening? Vincent suggests it's not just random, right? That the location itself often reveals something.
Exactly. He argues that where the audit happens reveals this kind of fascinating gradient of public accountability, or maybe lack thereof. For instance, you might think a federal post office would be straightforward, but he notes they can sometimes show surprising resistance, maybe due to local management misunderstanding federal rules. Police stations, on the other hand, are often the real crucible, the place where recording rights get most intensely tested, but also potentially affirmed. Then you have more sensitive places like health departments. There, the ethical tightrope of protecting individual privacy becomes the auditor's biggest challenge. They have to be incredibly careful not to capture private health information. He really unpacks how each type of public building, whether it's the DMV, a library, or a courthouse, presents its own unique set of challenges and opportunities for testing and confirming First Amendment rights. It really highlights how inconsistent the understanding and respect for these rights can be across different public institutions. As we're digging into all these crucial details, it really hammers home how much insight Vincent's book offers into understanding these rights fully. If you're finding this deep dive valuable and want the complete picture, you'll definitely want to check out Protecting Our Rights, The Role of First Amendment Auditors. You can find it easily using the link in our show notes. Right to Amazon.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the why. Let's get into the how a bit more, especially navigating that tricky area between exercising rights and respecting privacy. We know the legal framework is strong, right? We talked about Glick v. Cuniff and Turner v. Driver. Those cases clearly protect recording public officials in public.
That's right. Those cases are absolutely crucial precedents. They reinforce that federal and state laws provide a really robust framework, especially for recording public officials while they're performing their duties out in public.
But yeah, let's unpack that delicate balance. Transparency versus individual privacy. It can feel like walking a tightrope. How does Vincent advise auditors to handle that?
It absolutely is a tightrope walk, and he acknowledges that. The key legal concept here is the reasonable expectation of privacy. Now, that expectation is generally very high in, say, your home, but it's considerably lower in truly public spaces, like a sidewalk or a park. However, even within public buildings, some areas still carry a higher expectation of privacy. Think restrooms, maybe private offices, or areas where sensitive personal information is being handled, like at that health department counter. So Vincent's book details strategies for auditors to navigate this carefully. Things like maintaining awareness of your surroundings, clearly communicating your purpose if asked, being selective about what you record, focusing on the interactions with officials, not trying to capture random private citizens, and just generally making ethical decisions in the moment. He gives examples like maybe blurring faces or editing out sensitive health information if it's accidentally captured during an audit, or in a library, focusing just on a public meeting, not zooming in on what individuals are reading. It's about being effective in upholding rights, but also being respectful of others.
So definitely not a free-for-all. It's about a thoughtful approach. And Vincent stresses, doesn't he, that maybe the most important practical tip isn't just knowing the law, but really mastering your own demeanor. Can you expand on his practical advice?
Oh, absolutely. Vincent really champions this idea. He argues that maintaining a calm, respectful demeanor isn't just, the nice thing to do. It's actually a strategic tool. It often disarms potential confrontation and kind of forces officials to respond more professionally themselves rather than escalating things. But beyond demeanor, he lays out a pretty clear roadmap for auditors. First step, preparation and research. You have to know the relevant laws, federal, state, local. Research the specific location layout, any posted policies. Plan your approach. Get your gear ready, camera charged, extra battery, enough storage. Second, conducting the audit. Introduce yourself if appropriate. Explain your purpose calmly and respectfully. Stick to publicly accessible areas and make sure you're documenting interactions clearly. Good audio and video are key. Third, dealing with law enforcement, which often happens. Know your rights. Stay composed, even if they're not. Comply with lawful orders, like maybe moving to a slightly different public spot if you're genuinely obstructing something. But understand you don't have to comply with unlawful orders, like in order to simply stop recording in a public space where you're allowed to be. And always, always document that interaction itself. Finally, documenting and sharing. Review your footage. Edit it responsibly. Maybe blur bystanders. Remove sensitive info. Provide context for viewers. Explain the purpose, the location, the relevant laws. Highlight key moments. Choose your platform, YouTube, Facebook, etc. And engage professionally with comments. Maybe use it as an educational opportunity.
It's really clear that when these audits are done right, following that kind of advice, they can lead to some real, tangible, positive changes. What are some of the success stories from the book that really illustrate that impact?
Yeah, there are some really compelling examples in the book where audits directly led to significant improvements. One case involved an audit at a police station. The video showed officers giving out incorrect information about recording rights. That video got a lot of attention online, and it actually prompted the department to implement new specific training programs on First Amendment rights for all their officers. That's a concrete change. Another example is at a DMV. An audit revealed staff were largely unaware of the public's right to record in public areas. That led to a comprehensive review of their policies and new training for the staff there. And in a library, an audit actually prompted them to update their official policies to explicitly allow the recording of public meetings held there, which fosters greater transparency and public engagement. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, like Vincent does, these audits contribute to building that culture of accountability, not just by deterring bad behavior, but by actively encouraging proactive steps, things like adopting body-worn cameras or creating clearer policies for public interaction.
Looking ahead then, how is this landscape evolving? What are some of the future trends or emerging issues that Vincent points to in the book that we should maybe keep an eye on?
Yeah, the landscape is definitely dynamic, and Vincent does look ahead. Technology is a big one, obviously. We're seeing the continued proliferation of smartphones. Everyone has a camera. Body-worn cameras are becoming more common for law enforcement themselves, which adds another layer. Live streaming platforms like Facebook Live or YouTube Live offer immediate, unedited transparency. And then you have emerging tech like drones, maybe wearable cameras like glasses, offering new ways to document. Legally, we'll likely continue to see battles play out. More state-level legislation might pop up, either trying to support or maybe restrict public recording. Future court rulings will inevitably continue to shape and define these rights, especially as they intersect with evolving privacy laws. The social and political context matters too. Public perception of auditors, the general political climate, ongoing social movements focused on civil liberties, all these things influence how audits are conducted and how they're received. And finally, the role of auditors themselves might be evolving. Vincent suggests a trend towards maybe greater professionalization, more collaboration with established civil liberties organizations like the ACLU, and perhaps more focus on organized advocacy for specific policy changes based on audit findings.
Wow. Okay, as we wrap this up, it's really striking how Vincent weaves together these foundational constitutional rights with the essential role these First Amendment auditors are playing on the ground. We've seen how these individuals, often just armed with a camera and a solid understanding of their rights, are actively pushing for more transparency, more accountability, and ultimately trying to build more public trust in our institutions. Their persistence, their dedication, it seems clear it's making a real difference.
It really does seem that way. And Bill Vincent's book truly emphasizes that this isn't just a passing trend. It's ongoing, vital work for a healthy democracy. Yes, there are persistent challenges, legal hurdles, social pushback, resistance from some officials. But all that just highlights the need for continued vigilance, for citizens to stay engaged, which I think raises a really important question for everyone listening. What can you do in your own way to contribute to a more transparent, accountable, and just society? Maybe it's just understanding your rights better. Maybe it's paying more attention to local government. Consider how understanding and exercising these rights, even in small ways, can really strengthen the fabric of our communities.
Absolutely. And if you are ready to dive even deeper into this really crucial topic, we can't recommend Bill Vincent's book enough. It's Protecting Our Rights, The Role of First Amendment Auditors. You can find the link straight to it on Amazon right there in our show notes. Check it out. Thank you so much for listening to the Deep Dive Podcast.